Debbie Reynolds appeared on Later with Bob Costas on March 24th, 1992. And it was marking the 40th anniversary of Singing in the Rain. And she talked a bit about that film. I don't want to spoil a good story, but let's just say Fred Astaire is involved. Wink, wink. She also talked about why her TV series failed. And it was about standing up against the cigarette companies. She called smoking her biggest vice. Next up, men and bad choices in husbands, as she talks about. And it's amazing hearing her talk about her life and her issues, and then thinking about her daughter, Carrie Fisher's, addressing many of the same issues in a much different fashion. It's striking. Very similar people, very different approaches. That's what happens with families. I know.
Thanks for staying up later. It's hard to believe, but Debbie Reynolds acknowledges with a smile that she's been in show business for around 40 years
44
now, right?
years,
44 years. So let's cover as much of it as we can in half an hour's time, and we'll begin with Singing in the Rain.
All right.
40 years ago, 1952, and some people still regard it as the single best Hollywood movie musical. I know Roger Ebert feels that way because he wrote to that effect in the New York Daily News only about a week ago.
It's a cult picture now, and at the time that we were making it, everybody says, now, did you think it was when you were making it, Debbie? Now, to ask me that is the wrong person. They should have been asking Gene or Adolph Common and Betty Green, who really had experience. I was 17. So, you know, for me to have had any knowledge of, is this going to be a classic, or is this great, a young kid, I was just fighting to keep up with the stars, so to speak. But I think it is a great picture, and it deserves to go down in history. I love Gigi, too, and I love The Sound of Music, so I think there's other great musicals, but that was so fun. That's fun. That stayed for every generation. It passes right on.
Gene Kelly, Sid Charisse, Donald O'Connor is in it, and of course the Kelly scene where he's splashing his way down the street is one of the single best remembered scenes of any kind. Forget about musicals, probably one of the 10 or 12 best remembered scenes in American movie history, wouldn't you think?
That scene, of course, was done on what we called Lot 2, which was a second lot facility. And it was all tarped in at the top, sprinklers, and shot at night. And we all went over to watch Gene get doused for 7 hours dancing in the rain. But it was a really simple number if you break it down dance-wise. It's just its concept was so great. That's his genius.
Did he have a sense, did everybody have a sense that this scene in particular was something special as it played itself out?
No, I don't think so. I think he thought of every number as special. I think he loved the ballet with Sid, particularly, and with the gangsters tossing the coin and all that. You know, he spent a lot of time on the ballet. And Make 'Em Laugh number that Donald actually worked out even more than Gene. But he kind of was drawn to those two numbers. Because he did that one last. Singing in the Rain he did last because he had so much to concentrate on after all directing and writing, and I mean, this unreal, the amount of work he took on. Why, that was the last number he did. So I think to him it was kind of a throwaway. It turned out to be the classic.
Wasn't there a time, I'm not sure if it was during the filming of Singing in the Rain, where learning to be a dancer had beaten you down so much that I guess you were on the verge of tears or maybe actually in tears, and who comes along to save you but
Fred Astaire. Well, Gene had worked so hard on creating this film that all of us had, in those days, you rehearsed all the dances and then you did the book. But you knew all the numbers and then you shot the numbers and then you did the book. So it didn't flow, you know, exactly. It didn't do scene for scene. But yes, I was always in tears because to keep up with them was, to me, like an impossible task. But it's like anything in life. If you don't give up and you just keep going straight ahead, working like a dog, doesn't mean you don't fall down dissolved in tears, especially if you're a young little girl. But as I was under the piano and they had gone to lunch one day, a pair of legs walked by and Mr. Astaire heard somebody sobbing. You know, I can't do this, I'll never. I want to go home to my mommy. And he said, Debbie, you can come out now and you can come watch me dance. You can come watch me rehearse. And he never allowed anyone to watch him rehearse. So I went in and I visited his set in the corner, sitting on the floor, watching him just go crazy, trying to find the right dance steps. He used just a cane and drums, to rehearse, and with Hermes Pan, his choreographer. So I watched for an hour and a half, watching him die, sweat, and just go crazy. And he said, now you see how hard it is, Debbie, you're not alone. So go back in and work. So that's the kind of teachers I had.
There's a great closing scene in Singing in the Rain, the kiss in front of the billboard.
Well, I was 17, so I understand, and I became 18 in the picture, so I had never been kissed before, and especially had never had any particular type of, they call it, I believe, French kissing, you see.
Yeah, I believe that would be the expression, yes.
Word. So I was rather startled.
It's in the vernacular now.
Now you could say a lot of things. But in those days, well, my family, I'm raised Nazarene, and certain things were just forbidden, and I had never had a kiss. So when Gene laid one on me, the set had to stop, and there was a lot of problems with me about that. So if you'll notice the kiss, after he explained to me that that was not anything bad, he kissed me like that, you know, with his lips very closed. So it hardly looks sexy or romantic. It's just sort of this, because he got very angry with me.
Well, maybe not sexy, but definitely romantic, in the way of those old Hollywood films.
Well, let's say I was that little girl.
You actually grew up, at least by your mid-teens, right? You're in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm 16. I entered a bathing beauty contest in Burbank, won it. There were talent scouts there, and I went to Warner Brothers, and that's how I started. I had never had any training. Then I went to Metro MGM, and that started the musicals, and everybody in the world was there. You know, Katharine Hepburn and Greer Garson and Garbo had just barely walked out the door. It was a very exciting time. Ann Miller, everybody, June Allison.
Some of those women are older than you, so who were your contemporaries? Who did you go to those Hollywood classes with? Because they had to send you to school on the set, right?
Yes, we went to school. I was still in high school. So Elizabeth Taylor was one of my, in this, Claude Jarman Jr. I think it was just the three of us. Might have been Dean Stockwell in there for a little bit. Because he was doing all the boy with the green hair and all those pictures. He was just a little tiny guy. So I went to that school for about a year. Elizabeth and I were the only ones. She was making some picture with Robert Taylor. I can't remember what it was. So she was this huge star, and then have to go to school and do her little silly lessons. You know, she didn't like school, to say the least. I liked school because I knew I was going back and be a gym teacher. I never planned that I would continue staying on in show business for 44 years, but I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it worked and that I'm still here.
That's really what you wanted? You thought that maybe you would have a few years in the movies or whatever, and then you'd be back home in Texas?
Oh, in Burbank, studying to be a gym teacher because I was a really terrific athlete, all our family, and how could anyone dream of being a movie star? You went to the movies, you weren't in the movies, you went to the... So, I mean, how would I think that I'm going to be behind that wall where there's a major motion picture studio with Betty Davis and Jimmy Stewart and Cagney? And I mean, what had this to do with my life? Nothing. So I was sure if I saved my money, you know, I could go back and get a scholarship and I could become a great gym teacher. I never got back to college.
So when they cast you as Tammy, they weren't just casting a physical image. That was fairly close to what your actual personality and view of the world was at that point, huh?
Yes, that was my view. I was raised very Victorian, and even though I was a Girl Scout, but I didn't travel anywhere. I didn't know anything. You know, I had to learn all that real fast. It was very exciting because and I met so many great people that they'd give me lists of songs to study and books to read and classical music to listen to. I had to grow up. Oh, I didn't have to. I wanted. I was like a sponge, you know. Still am. That's one thing. You either grow or you don't make it. I mean, I always had this desire to know a little bit about everything, or rather a lot about everything. And I have learned a lot, and I've enjoyed every second of the learning. And I haven't finished learning. I have lots more that I want to do. I just haven't had time to retire yet.
Is The Unsinkable Molly Brown your best film role, you think?
I think Unsinkable Molly Brown is the best film role. Singing in the Rain is the best picture. I liked a couple of others. How the West Was Won, I think, is a really good picture. couple of others, Goodbye Charlie and Singing Nun, some, you know, The Pleasure of His Company.
A couple others I can think of, The Tender Trap with Sinatra, and there was one with Tony Curtis.
The Rat Race.
The Rat Race, where the tables were kind of turned, because in this case, he played this saxophone player, and he was sort of the innocent coming to New York, and you were the more sophisticated one, or the reversal of roles.
Yeah, it was more dramatic than I'd done. It was Don Rickles' first picture, too. It was fun to do that. Mary Mary, which was another play with Barry Nelson. I've had a nice chance at some very good roles, and I've enjoyed each one that I've done. I recently did a picture called The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner. I did a one-day part, just nothing, one line, I don't know why. They wanted someone at an Oscar show, an old movie star that was still alive, so they found me. And Kevin said, what inspired him when he was 7 years old, he saw How the West Was Won. He said, I want to make a picture like that someday.
Everybody was in How the West Was Won.
Everybody.
I mean, Spencer Tracy was the narrator.
Right.
I think there were multiple directors, but one of them was John Ford. Right?
John Ford,
John
Henry
Wayne.
Hathaway, George Marshall, yeah, John Wayne.
John Wayne's in this, Gregory Peck's in it, Jimmy Stewart's in it, you're in it, who else? Carl Malden's in it.
Hank Fonda, Agnes Moorehead, Carol Baker. I said Jimmy Stewart, right? Everybody. They put everybody under contract that you could think of, and they were all brilliant.
Shirley MacLaine, I guess, was considered for the role in The Unsinkable Molly Brown, wasn't she? She turned it down, or they
No,
chose
she was all
you
set
over
to
her,
do it.
or what was the deal?
She was set to do it. It was at MGM, and the director was Chuck Walters, and he wanted Shirley MacLaine, yeah. But she was in a lawsuit with Hal Wallace, who had her contract at RKO, and he wouldn't let her out. So Chuck didn't really want me, and he came to my house. It was pouring down rain one day, and to tell me that I couldn't do it, you know, and I shouldn't even attempt to do it, because I kept calling and saying, let me do Molly Brown. I am Molly Brown. So he came to the house, and we sat down to talk, and he said, Debbie, I just have to tell you that, you know, you're too short for the part. So I used an old Helen Haynes line a long time ago, how short is the part? It's silly, you know.
Yeah.
Of course I could be Molly Brown. I was Molly Brown. Anyone, you know it's me.
There was a Debbie Reynolds TV show in the late 60s, early 70s, and a lot of people would have said, well, you know, she is a light comedienne, perfectly suited for television. You know, she's got the skills, and she's popular, and there's a broad appeal to what she does, very accessible. She should be a natural for TV. Why didn't it work out that well, do you think?
Well, it would have worked out. It's just that the sponsor was Salem Cigarettes, and they promised me they wouldn't advertise cigarettes, and then they did. So I challenged them not to, and they said, well, you just go on anyway and shut up, because you're not the sponsor. So I said, well, I won't go on if you put cigarettes on, because none of us should be smoking. And so I made a stand, but it was a foolish stand on my part. It cost me millions. You know, and my generation did smoke, and everyone's trying not to smoke, but we all smoke. It's a big fight. My only addiction is that I want to have a cigarette once in a while. It's been a constant fight my whole life. That's why I won't advocate it. I think it's terrible.
Now, how many weeks out of the year these days do you do your stage show?
42 weeks a year I travel.
Really?
Yeah. On the road again, dum, 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 dum. That's me. I'm in the act with the Barbra Streisand, and I do different kind of people, you know, it just depends. I do impressions and things. Betty Davis and Katharine Hepburn, I don't know, you know, I do all kinds of variety. I do a variety show. People say, what kind of show? Well, it's like we used to do. And Liza still does it, and Shirley MacLaine, and Bernadette Peters. Some of us still tour, Joel Grey, you know.
And you'll be in Las Vegas when?
I'm there March 24th through my birthday, which is April 1st, so I'm there 2 weeks, March 24th through April the 5th. And I'm going to do a special thing. I've never done this before. Every Wednesday and every Saturday, anyone that comes to those shows, I'll meet them afterwards, take pictures, we'll have a party. I'm going to give birthday parties so that I can meet the fans. I've never really done that. You go on the stage, you do your show, and then you go back and you rest. And I've decided I should really get out there and say hello while I can.
And we're back with Debbie Reynolds. I was talking to the producers earlier, and I never do anything that can be construed as gossipy. It makes me uncomfortable. But in your case, the way you presented it in your autobiography, it's more the story of how you survived it than the details of what went on.
My life is a survival. I don't know why it worked out that way, because I really hadn't planned my life. Thought my life would be quite simple. You get married, you have your children, you stay married. I mean, that's what all my family did. But I've made up for the whole family, so it's okay. I have no taste in men, obviously.
Well, at the age of 23, you wind up married to Eddie Fisher, which...
I married Eddie when I was 22,
22.
and I had 2 children, Carrie and Todd. And then Eddie left and went with Elizabeth, and so that was, I was up to age 27. And then I married a man named Harry Carl, who is a shoe magnate, they call them, you know, very rich person. And he was a gambleaholic, so speaking of problems, which I didn't know. But I was married to him 13 years, and during that marriage, I didn't realize this, but he was gambling consistently, and so he lost 21 million of his and 8 or 9 of mine. And so at 39, I was broke, and I chose to leave him because it was just going down, down, down. So I continued raising his 3 children. I had 3 stepchildren by then that were his, and my 2. And I raised those 5. It took me 12 years to get out of debt. I came here to New York City and did a play called Irene in 1973. That's really what helped my career get back on track and give me a new push and drive my price up right, and so I could pull myself out of problems. And that took a long time, but I made it with perseverance, and I had my kids around, so I was very lucky that they gave me a reason to live. Sometimes you get too far down, you get, you know, too much burden on your back, and you have temptation that you say, oh, I give up. But you can't ever give up, and so I did make it, and I'm here as proof that you can survive all these unwanted crises.
Had he put you in debt through business deals in order to finance the gamble?
Business deals. But it's partly my fault. I mean, I signed everything my husband put in front of me. Sign this, dear, you know, it's a note, it's nothing. So, you know, I trusted my husband, I loved my husband, and I thought he would be protecting us, but he just slipped away.
This whole Eddie Fisher, Elizabeth Taylor thing has been discussed before, and I don't have any interest in discussing it, except for this one question.
That's everybody's life.
Except for
just this one question.
But this one will be different.
I don't want to bother you with this, Debbie. It's too old hat. But
this one will be different.
Yeah.
How did it make you feel about the press and about people's feelings about so-called celebrities, people they don't know? Because this, after all, is your life being used just as grist for the mill.
Oh, well, it wasn't really that. You know, what's happened of the last 17 years with all of the gossip magazines, you know, now we have so many more, and television, now we have so many shows on reporting every little thing anybody does, that really, with our situation, it was very big because Elizabeth was such a huge star, and I was hot in movies, and Eddie was this huge... So it was a triangle of stars. I think that caught the fancy of everybody. And it was the truth that it was a real breakup, you know, so it was unexpected. And it was unexpected to me also. But these are things that happen every day to a lot of women. You have to get over it. You have no choice. When a man wants to go, the man's gone. It wouldn't matter what the woman wanted to do about that. His choice was to leave. And somehow they get very vague memories, like they never loved you. They never asked you to marry them. I mean, somehow, that's the only thing that annoys me about breakups. I think people should be polite. I think that they should look really deep in their heart and say, well, I did love her, but I don't love her anymore. I love this other person, so I'm going to go on. But to say, I never loved her anyway, I don't know why I ever married her, it makes it all so embarrassing, and as if he was a bird head in the first place then, and I was a bigger bird head to have ever fallen for it. You know, so it makes you feel almost ashamed of yourself for having gone that direction in life. And I think that's disgraceful.
Our thanks to Debbie Reynolds. Nice of you to come by. Thank
you, dear. You use this now. This is moisturizer and it has sunblock, and you'll stay gorgeous and be a big star forever.
Do you have anything that'll make me look older? It's really my problem, actually.
It's called Studio Secrets. It'll be out soon.
It's Studio Secrets. It'll be out soon, my friends. And we're out of here. See you later.